Nestled in the opulent hills of Los Angeles, the Howard Hughes House is a sprawling, Art Deco-inspired mansion with a storied history. Once home to the enigmatic billionaire Howard Hughes, the property now holds a reputation not for its luxury, but for its chilling supernatural occurrences. Howard Hughes was a man of great accomplishments, an aviation pioneer, filmmaker, and one of the richest men in the world. However, his later years were defined by paranoia and isolation. Hughes spent much of his time locked away in his Los Angeles mansion, succumbing to his growing obsessions and eccentricities. His fear of germs led to bizarre rituals, and his reclusive nature distanced him from even his closest associates. Hughes died in 1976, but according to local lore, his spirit never left the mansion. After Hughes' death, the house changed hands several times, with each owner reporting strange happenings. Some claimed to hear the sound of faint typewriter keys clacking late at night, a possible echo of Hughes' incessant note-taking during his life. Others reported the pungent smell of cigars suddenly filling the air, despite no one smoking in the house. The most unsettling phenomena involve sightings of a tall, shadowy figure roaming the dimly lit halls. Witnesses describe it as a man dressed in a tailored suit, with features obscured, as if his face is hidden in perpetual shadow. One notable account comes from a real estate agent tasked with selling the property in the late 1990s. While giving a tour to potential buyers, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps following them through the grand foyer, though no one else was present. A chandelier above began to sway as if disturbed by an unseen force, prompting the clients to flee in terror. Many believe Hughes' spirit lingers due to his profound loneliness in life. Some speculate he is searching for something, perhaps peace, or the sense of control he so desperately craved. Others think the house itself may have absorbed the energy of his obsessions and fears, replaying them in an endless loop. Interestingly, a few skeptics suggest the occurrences are merely the result of Hughes' legendary legacy, an overactive imagination fueled by the stories of his eccentricity. However, even they can't explain the sudden cold spots, untraceable whispers, or electrical malfunctions that plague the house to this day. Today, the Howard Hughes House is privately owned and remains closed to the public. Urban legends persist, and trespassers seeking a thrill have reported eerie encounters. Despite its eerie reputation, the house continues to fascinate those who are drawn to the darker corners of Hollywood's history. The current owners, whose identities remain a closely guarded secret, rarely speak of their experiences in the house. However, a leaked video surfaced on the internet in 2017, allegedly filmed by a guest staying in one of the mansion's lavish guest rooms. The grainy footage shows an ornate mirror mounted above the fireplace. As the camera pans, a man in a dark suit appears in the reflection, standing perfectly still. When the camera turns to capture the room directly, it is empty. Local journalists attempted to authenticate the video, but no one has claimed responsibility for uploading it. Despite, or perhaps because of the video's ambiguity, it reignited public fascination with the house, drawing amateur paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers to the gates of the sprawling estate. In 2021, a new mystery emerged when the grand piano, left untouched in the home's music room for decades, began to play on its own. The melody, soft and sorrowful, was said to echo throughout the house at odd hours, often in the early morning. The current housekeeper, who agreed to speak under the condition of anonymity, described the phenomenon. It happens most often when the house is quiet, when no one else is around. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the notes, they were so clear, so deliberate. The song is always the same, like a lullaby, but haunting. Sometimes, I feel like someone is watching me as it plays. The melody was later identified by a music historian as a piece written by Hughes himself during his reclusive years, a fact that few outside his inner circle even knew. How the tune came to life remains unexplained. Perhaps the most unsettling discovery was made by a contractor hired to renovate the mansion in 2023. While inspecting the foundation, he stumbled upon a hidden doorway concealed behind a bookshelf in the study. Beyond the door was a narrow passage leading to a small, windowless room. Inside were remnants of Hughes' peculiar lifestyle, stacks of handwritten notes, empty jars of food, and a single leather chair placed in the center of the room. On the wall opposite the chair, faint scratch marks could be seen, as though someone or something had tried to claw its way out. The contractor, unnerved by the discovery, left the project unfinished and refused to return. A neighbor, who has lived in the area for decades, recalls a strange event from just a few months ago. Late one night, a black car with tinted windows pulled up to the mansion's gates. A man stepped out, dressed in vintage clothing reminiscent of Hughes' era. He carried a briefcase and seemed to enter without hesitation, though the gate remained locked. The man was never seen leaving, and when questioned, the owners denied having any visitors that evening. Security footage from nearby properties showed only shadows elongated and distorted moving across the grounds, but no clear image of the visitor. A few weeks after the mysterious visitor was sighted, the house's lights began flickering erratically, visible even from the road below. A neighbor, alarmed by what she described as the seizure of light, called the police, fearing an electrical fire. When authorities arrived, the mansion was dark and silent, the gates locked as always. A brief investigation revealed no signs of tampering or residents inside, though the faint scent of cigar smoke lingered in the air, a detail noted by two officers who later refused to discuss the event further. But that same night, an anonymous post appeared on a local online forum. "I've been watching the Hughes house for years, and tonight something strange happened." After the police left, the house lit up again, every window glowing like a beacon. It wasn't random this time, it was rhythmic like Morse code. "I swear I saw shadows moving through the light, pacing the upper floors. I recorded it, but when I tried to watch the footage, my phone froze and deleted the file. I'm not crazy, I know what I saw." The post quickly went viral before being mysteriously deleted within hours. Around the same time, a new artifact linked to the mansion surfaced. A journal, allegedly written by one of Hughes' personal aides in the late 1950s. It was discovered during an estate sale in Palm Springs and purchased by a private collector. The journal, now the subject of online speculation, includes entries describing Hughes' descent into madness during his final years in the house. One entry reads, "Mr. Hughes insists there is someone in the house with him. He hears footsteps in the hallways, whispers in the vents. I've checked every room, every corner, but there is no one. Still, he refuses to sleep unless all the doors are locked from the inside, and he's begun carving strange symbols into the walls of his bedroom. He claims they will keep it out. I don't know what he means, but I've started to hear things, too." The final entry ends abruptly. "It's in the house. I can't stay here. God forgive me for leaving him alone." In October 2024, a group of paranormal investigators managed to gain access to the mansion for a live-streamed exploration. The group focused on the basement, an area rarely mentioned in accounts of the haunting. What they found sent shockwaves through their online audience. As they descended the stairs, their equipment began to malfunction, audio distorted, cameras flickered. In the live feed, viewers noticed something chilling. A faint voice, distant but clear, repeating a single phrase, "It's not over." The group reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread and unease, and one investigator claimed to hear her name whispered directly into her ear, though she was the only woman present. Suddenly, the feed cut out, leaving thousands of viewers staring at a static screen. The investigators later emerged shaken and refused to speak of what they encountered, but the brief footage captured before the stream failed was enough to reignite rumors of Hughes' secret experiments during his lifetime. Some claim he was dabbling in more than aviation and film, that he was attempting to manipulate forces beyond human understanding. The current owners have not been seen entering or leaving the property in recent months, though rumors persist of construction activity at odd hours. Workers have reported a vault being unearthed beneath the house, its entrance sealed with heavy steel and marked with the same symbols described in the journal. What lies within the vault remains unknown, as does the fate of those who dare to open it. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. Despite the heightened curiosity, no official news has surfaced about the mysterious vault beneath the mansion. However, an anonymous whistleblower claiming to be a former contractor at the site contacted a well-known podcast dedicated to urban legends. In a cryptic audio message, he described what he saw before abruptly leaving the job. There's something about that vault. It's not just a room or a safe. It's more like a threshold. We cut through the first layer of steel, but there was another barrier, almost like an airlock. The deeper we went, the colder it got. I swear, the air itself felt alive, like it was moving, breathing. And then we heard it like a low hum, but not mechanical. It sounded organic, like something waiting. The whistleblower disappeared shortly after sending the recording, adding another layer of mystery to the mansion's already dark legend. While researching the mansion's construction, a historian uncovered a peculiar detail about the architect who designed it. The man, Maxwell Dane, was renowned for his extravagant Art Deco buildings, but Hughes Mansion was his final project before his sudden retirement. Dane vanished from public life shortly after completing the house, leaving behind a cryptic note in his diary. The house is finished, but the cost is too great. I have seen what he intends to do, and I cannot bear to be part of it. The design is flawed intentionally. It should never be unlocked. What Dane meant by unlocked is unclear, but the discovery has fueled speculation that the house itself was designed to contain something or someone. In early November 2024, a delivery driver reported a bizarre encounter while dropping off a package at the mansion's gate. In his statement, the driver claimed he saw a man standing inside the gated property, barely visible in the shadows of the towering trees. He didn't move, not even when I honked. I couldn't make out his face, but there was something wrong about the way he stood, like he wasn't solid. When I stepped out of the truck to leave the package by the gate, I glanced back, and he was suddenly closer, only a few feet away, but I didn't see him move. I just ran. The driver quit his job the next day, refusing to return to the area. A few nights later, the mansion's tower beacon, long dormant, unexpectedly turned on. The pulsating light swept across the Los Angeles skyline, reminiscent of the searchlights Hughes once adored. Residents as far as Beverly Hills reported the eerie beam, describing it as oddly hypnotic. One man, a retired journalist living nearby, claimed the light carried a message. I've worked with Morse code during the war and I know what I saw. The light wasn't random. It spelled something. A warning, I think. It said, "It's not him," whatever that means. The journalist has since refused to speak further, citing a string of unsettling phone calls and unmarked vehicles parked outside his home. In November 2024, another chilling chapter in the mansion's history unfolded when an unexpected visitor arrived at the gates. This time, it wasn't a thrill-seeker or a paranormal investigator, it was a government agent, whose presence sent shockwaves through the local community. The man, who identified himself only as Agent Gray, requested to speak with the current owners, but when he was denied entry, he left without a word. However, a few days later, a highly classified document was anonymously leaked to several journalists. The document was labeled Top Secret and contained details about a government investigation into the mansion that had been ongoing since the 1960s. According to the report, the house had been the subject of covert operations during Hughes' later years. The government had allegedly monitored Hughes' activities for possible links to underground experiments, including work with artificial intelligence and even reports of experiments on human consciousness. The report mentioned a Project Echo, referencing a supposed containment unit in the mansion, though no further details were provided. The only clue was a symbol almost identical to the ones Hughes had carved into the walls of his bedroom, marked across several classified documents, all leading back to the vault. Meanwhile, the paranormal activity surrounding the mansion became even more disturbing. In late January 2014, a group of trespassers who had snuck into the house at night reported hearing sounds that defied logic. At first, it was like whispers, but then the whispers grew louder, more urgent. They were coming from the walls, no, from the floors. It was like the house was talking to us. We tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't open. It was as if the house was keeping us in. The group eventually escaped through a broken window, but one of them had left behind a small handheld camera. The footage, though shaky and incomplete, captured something none of them could explain. In the final frames of the video, the figure of a man dressed in a suit, his face still obscured by shadow, can be seen walking down the long hallway toward the camera. As he draws nearer, the air temperature in the room drops drastically, causing the camera's lens to fog. The last shot shows the man reaching for the camera before the video cuts out entirely. The recording ends with a single, whispered voice, "It's not safe to leave." Not long after, an obscure letter surfaced, reportedly written by one of Hughes' closest associates, a man named Marcus Greer. Greer had been a regular visitor to the mansion during Hughes' later years and had worked closely with him on various projects. The letter, found in an old box of papers at an estate sale, hinted at a truth far darker than anyone had imagined. Hughes has lost himself. I've seen him speak to someone who isn't there, who never was. There are forces in that house, forces he thinks can give him the control he's lost. I've watched him build something in that house, something alive. The experiments we've been conducting, I fear they're not meant for human hands. The final line of the letter was barely legible, as if Greer had written it in a hurry. He's planning to open the vault. If that happens, we're all doomed. Then, in a shocking turn of events, the construction work on the vault intensified. Workers began arriving at all hours, and an unusual silence hung over the property. On the evening of February 14, 2013, a single, haunting photograph surfaced on social media. The image showed a man, presumably the current owner, standing in front of the vault. The door had been partially opened, revealing only darkness beyond, but what sent chills down the spine of everyone who saw it was the man's face. His expression was eerily calm, as if he had already come to terms with something incomprehensible. In the background of the photograph, a faint silhouette could be seen emerging from the shadows of the vault. The figure was tall, unnaturally so, and its outline seemed to distort the very air around it, as though it were not entirely of this world. The photo quickly disappeared from the internet, but not before it had been copied by thousands. No one knows who took it or who was standing in front of the vault. What is clear, however, is that the final stages of whatever Hughes had planned are now set in motion. It was the spring of 2005 when the world finally learned the truth, or at least a version of it. The haunting of the Howard Hughes house had escalated to the point where it could no longer be ignored, not by the press, not by the authorities, and certainly not by the few remaining individuals who dared to live in its shadow. By now, the mansion was a national obsession. Every new leak, every strange event sparked a frenzy of speculation. But it was the opening of the vault that would finally reveal what had been hidden for so long. In April 2005, an anonymous tip led a team of investigative journalists to the mansion. They had been following the story for years, piecing together fragments of the strange occurrences, the government reports, and the unsolved mysteries surrounding Hughes. But this tip promised something more: a chance to uncover what lay behind the steel doors of the vault. When the team arrived, the mansion was eerily silent. The construction had stopped, and the gates, usually tightly locked, were wide open. A lone figure stood at the entrance, dressed in dark clothing, watching them as they approached. The journalists didn't recognize him, but his presence was enough to stir a sense of unease. The man identified himself only as Dr. Harris, a name that drew no immediate recognition. He led them inside, his demeanor calm but unnervingly detached. As they walked through the house, the air seemed colder, heavier. The walls, once full of life, now appeared dark and hollow, as if they were closing in on them. At the foot of the stairs, Dr. Harris paused. "You've come for the truth," he said quietly. "But some truths are not meant to be known." Still, he led them down to the vault. The vault's door had been completely removed, revealing a room that was both ancient and modern, as if it existed outside of time. The walls were lined with strange equipment, some of it familiar, most of it unrecognizable. A large metallic structure stood at the center of the room, its shape both complex and unsettling. The room hummed with an eerie energy, and in the center of it all, a figure lay suspended in midair, connected to the machinery by a web of wires and tubes. It was a man, or what had once been a man. His features were unrecognizable, distorted by years of decay and strange alterations. His skin had turned a pale, almost translucent shade, and his eyes were wide open, staring but unseeing. The journalists gasped. This was no ordinary human body. It was something else entirely, something alive and yet not. Dr. Harris stepped forward, his face grim. This is Howard Hughes. Or at least it was. What you see before you is the result of decades of experimentation. Hughes wanted to transcend humanity, to become something more. He believed that by merging with technology he could live forever. He was wrong. He paused, as if reflecting on the tragedy before him. But the experiments didn't end with him. After Hughes died, they continued, and what you see here, it's the result of those efforts. The house, the vault, the forces you've sensed in the air, they are all part of a project he began and which others continued after his death. Project Echo wasn't just about technology. It was about creating something that could survive beyond the human form. A consciousness that could exist forever. The team stood in stunned silence, their minds reeling as the implications sank in. But then, something shifted in the room. The air grew even colder, and a low, vibrating hum seemed to fill the space, emanating from the suspended figure. The journalists turned to Dr. Harris, but he was gone. In his place stood the shadow of a man, tall and distorted, the same figure that had been seen lurking in the mansion's hallways in earlier photographs. It seemed to flicker in and out of reality, as though it wasn't quite solid. The shadow moved toward them, and the room's temperature plummeted. The unmistakable sound of breathing, deep, raspy, mechanical, filled the air. But no one was breathing. In a voice that was not quite human, the shadow spoke, "It's not over." It never was. The walls seemed to close in, and the machinery around the suspended body began to glow. The figure's eyes snapped open, glowing with an unnatural light. In that moment, the journalists understood the horrifying truth. Hughes had not just sought immortality. He had opened a door to something far worse, something that had remained hidden for decades. And now that door was wide open. The footage from that final encounter was released to the world, but it ended abruptly, as the camera fell to the floor, capturing only static and dark shadows before cutting out entirely. No one knows what happened to the journalists after that night. The mansion, once again, fell silent. The vault was sealed, and the house returned to its desolate state. Authorities refused to investigate further, citing the lack of evidence, but rumors swirled of sightings in the area, of strange occurrences around the mansion. Some say Hughes' consciousness still resides within the house, trapped between worlds, calling out to those who dare approach. Others claim the shadow has taken control of the house, forever entwining itself with the mansion's history. But one thing is certain: the Howard Hughes House is not just haunted by ghosts of the past. It holds something far darker, a force that remains hidden in the shadows, waiting for the next curious soul to step too close. And when they do, it will be too late. The Howard Hughes House has claimed its final victim, and it will not be the last. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. Any coincidences with real events or characters are accidental.